Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, professor of religious studies at Hendrix College and theologian in residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, director of lifelong learning and music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish, one Christian.
This week, we're reading the story of Jonah as told in the book of Jonah, chapters 1, 3, and 4. The story opens with God sending Jonah to prophesy against Israel's greatest enemy, the Assyrians, in their capital city of Nineveh. Jonah at first runs away from God, preferring to take his chances in the sea, where he is famously saved by spending 3 days in the belly of a fish. But when Jonah finally does make it to Nineveh, speaking only the minimum words of prophecy, the city undergoes a massive repentance, from the king to the cows, evoking the mercy of God, who decides not to destroy them. What might this story tell us about God's compassion toward our own enemies, we wonder? Are there people that we, like Jonah, wish God would not be merciful to? And what small word might God be asking us to say to our enemies so that they too might experience God's compassion? Thanks for joining us. Hey, Amy, it's Bible Worm time.
I know it is.
How are you this week?
I'm pretty good. I have this thought that came into my head right before you said hello to me, so I'm like distracted by the awesomeness of it. So I'm just going to say my thought.
Please.
We today are reading a book that has a worm in it.
It does,
God provides a worm.
A worm.
I wonder if it's a Bible worm.
A worm appointed by God. Yeah,
I mean,
Bible. This is the Bible worm.
I don't know what that says.
Are there other you think there would be other worms in the Bible? Like I know occasionally
there probably are, but
there's that one psalm where the speaker hopes that their enemy will dissolve like a snail.
Like a snail that you like salt?
I
Did they
guess
salt
so.
snails in biblical times?
I don't know that. Did you ever do that? That's kind of mean.
It's super mean. I mean, I certainly haven't done it.
I don't think I ever did that.
I did all kinds of things as a little kid. Like we were outside a lot, and I used to like give furry caterpillars haircuts. And we would have weddings between them. Like I would line them up on like opposite sides, and the ones that walked to each other got married. And also, I think I cooked some earthworms on a hot rock. Like,
I
was bored. I know.
Amy.
I'm sorry.
The worst thing I ever did.
Chatati lefanecha. I know. Yeah.
One time I got some goldfish from the store, and I was like, I love warm baths, and so I bet these fish would love a warm bath, and so I put them in warm water, and it turns out goldfish do not like to be in warm water.
When you said goldfish from the grocery store, I thought you meant the crackers.
At the grocery store. What did I mean? What did I say? The grocery store. Did you say
grocery? I think you said grocery store.
I totally did. Yeah. I don't know where the goldfish came from now that I think about it. No, not the crackers.
Not the
actual
store.
Living creatures, and I gave them a warm bath. And it turns out goldfish really hate warm water.
Not as much as worms hate being fried on a hot rock.
So it's Psalm 58:8, like the snail that dissolves into slime.
That's gross.
But I don't know exactly why it's dissolving into slime.
Yeah, because someone let young Amy near it.
Amy, we have started in a way that I was not expecting us to start today.
You know, you never know what's going to happen.
It is true.
It's an unfolding story.
The point was, the text today has a Bible worm in it. A worm in the Bible. Amy, today we are basically reading the book of Jonah. The narrative lectionary has us in Jonah 1 to 17, and 3, 1 to 10, which is all of those two chapters, and then in brackets 4, 1 to 11. So it's the whole book except for the psalm that Jonah sings in the belly of the fish. Mm-hmm. I just don't know how to make sense of the book of Jonah without reading chapter 4. Mm-hmm. So today we're just going to basically read the whole book of Jonah. And except for
it's a really short book.
It's a short book. It is true. Mm-hmm. It's actually not that much longer than some of the other texts we've done.
No, it's true.
This fall.
It's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a reminder to ourselves, you know, we're recording this a few weeks ahead of time because there's a lot of processing that has to take place in the Bible worm world, less than you might think. But it does, and nonetheless, it takes a little while. And so this text is coming out it's coming out right before the election. The Sunday that is being preached is the Sunday right after the U.S. election. And so I don't know whether that wants to inform the way we think about it or not, but people who are listening to and interpreting this text will be doing so kind of in moment. That Lord, like election moment. Good times. No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure, y'all.
I'm sure
everything's
fine. I'm sure it's great. I'm sure
what could be bad?
Couldn't be terrible. So, Amy, can you give us a little bit of background to the book of Jonah? That could mean all sorts of things, so I'm just going to leave it as an open question.
Yeah.
What do we need to know to start reading Jonah?
I'm going to say some things, and then there's probably other stuff you'll want to fill in also. So, first is sort of a question for you, I guess, Bobby. In the Jewish canon, the book of Jonah is with the prophets. It's considered one of the minor prophets, meaning the shorter books within the prophets. Is it
That's where it is in the Protestant canon.
It's okay. It's where it is in the Protestant canon too. Okay. So it is like other prophet stories in that someone is called to deliver an oracle and eventually does so. And it is unlike the prophetic texts in just about every other way. And we'll see many of the ways that happens. But I feel like one of the essential questions of this book is, like, what is the genre of it? Is this sort of like a novella, like a narrative? The way it was taught to me that I remember most clearly in graduate school is that it's sort of almost a satire of prophecy. But not everybody reads it that way. Or you can read it as being satire, but also conveying very serious messages sort of alongside that. In the book, this guy, Jonah, is sent to deliver a prophecy to the people of Nineveh, which is the capital of this huge kingdom of Assyria, which is a nation that at some point in history conquers the northern kingdom of Israel. But the text doesn't talk about that.
Right.
It just talks about the city of Nineveh. So if we are supposed to understand, like maybe readers would have understood that.
Right.
But the book doesn't talk about it that way. It just says the people of Nineveh, which is a quote unquote great city, is clearly a big city in the story, but that's all we know. Often this text is dated to the Persian period, which is when Jews or Israelites who have been sent off into exile are able to come back into the land.
Right.
There's some debate about it. As far as I know, really critical scholars today do not advocate the historicity of this prophet. Like, no one is really saying this story really happened as it is narrated here. I think the last thing that I would want to say, just in terms of the Jewish community, this text is read on Yom Kippur in the afternoon. There are a lot of different ways you could talk about themes of repentance within the context of this story, and so that is why it's placed there. And the children in my synagogue every year on Yom Kippur afternoon put on a performance of Jonah that they do in Hebrew, chanted in like the traditional melodies for this part of the canon, and they wear like appropriate hats for their role. Like the Jonah person has like some kind of whale hat, but has a whale hat, and there's a king and there's sailors.
Is there a worm hat?
Well, the worm doesn't say anything.
Oh man.
So no, there's no worm,
so
but there is a whale. So you could argue that there should be. There's a giant whale prop, and they have like a squirt water bottle, and like they make it go around the synagogue and squirt people like they're being squirted with that blowhole. Yeah. So
if the whale gets a part, the worm should get a part for sure.
I'm gonna make a worm for next
year. Yes.
Yeah.
And for the worm, you can use our little mascot guy.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will do that. Bobby, what did I miss in my introduction?
I got a little distracted by thinking about the worm.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that was totally my fault.
We're a little obsessed with this worm, y'all.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that. I was reading Robert Alter. You know, Robert Alter has this translation of the Bible. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And he has this little introduction. And you were talking about the genre of the book, and he said, all this has led scholars to ramble for labels to describe Jonah. It has been called everything from a Menippean satire to an allegory, but none of these identifications of Jonah is entirely convincing. And then here's his solution.
Okay.
I would see Jonah as its own kind of ad hoc, innovative narrative.
Cool.
Yeah. That's not really a genre.
Jonah's doing his own thing.
His own thing. Amy, I appreciate so much your setting of this text in the Persian period. I think that's probably right. And, there's some linguistic details and so on. We're placing it after the Assyrian destruction of the northern kingdom, which took place around 720, somewhere around in there, and after the destruction of the southern kingdom in 586 and the exile. And then the book is being written in that sort of post-exilic Persian period. It seems to be right, both linguistically and, as we'll see, the theology of the book. God has become the sort of more universal God, not just the God of the nation of Israel, but God who has, the way we tend to think about God today, I think, people in your tradition and my tradition, but this sort of like God is the God of everything. That said, there is a character named Jonah, a prophet, who is mentioned in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 14. We don't really get much of anything about him at all. Verse 14:25. Jeroboam reestablished Israel's border from blah, blah, blah. This was in agreement with the word that the Lord, the God of Israel, spoke through his servant, the prophet Jonah, Amittai's son. That's it. So and that's all we know about him. So we do get the character in this text that we're reading today has another life or another reference in this period. And if you place that historically, it's in the reign of Jeroboam II, who was in the mid-8th century, the last really great king of the northern kingdom of Israel. So if you read it that way, then the story of Jonah takes place before the destruction of either of the two kingdoms, about maybe 30 years or less before the destruction of Samaria, Israel, by the Assyrians.
That's important.
That's important. The reason that I'm sort of emphasizing that is because Robert Alter talked about this in his little commentary in his text as this would be, if you think about later writing a story about that, this would be like the Jewish community today telling a story about a prophet who was called to go to Berlin in 1936 and make a prophecy in the context of Nazi Germany before the Shoah.
That's right.
And that really, I'm trying to live with that a little bit today because I think Jonah is hilarious and interesting, but there's a weightiness to it that I think is easy to miss if you're not sort of thinking about it that way.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful.
All right, then we've got a lot of text to read, so I think let's just get to it. Yeah?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm reading Jonah. I'm starting in chapter 1, as you do, and I'm reading in the Common English Bible. The Lord's word came to Jonah, Amittai's son. Get up and go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their evil has come to my attention. So Jonah got up to flee to Tarshish from the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship headed for Tarshish. He paid the fare and went aboard to go with them to Tarshish, away from the Lord. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, so that there was a great storm on the sea. The ship looked like it might be broken to pieces. The sailors were terrified, and each one cried out to his God. They hurled the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to make it lighter. Now Jonah had gone down into the hold of the vessel to lie down and was deep in sleep. The ship's officer came and said to him, "How can you possibly be sleeping so deeply? Get up, call on your God. Perhaps the God will give some thought to us so that we won't perish." All right, so the first detail we get is just the name of the prophet, Jonah, son of Amittai. Is there anything about that name that's worth pondering?
The word Jonah means dove. And so I have heard commentators think about like the dove that Noah sends out that, comes back the first time unable to complete its mission. Yeah. And this Jonah is sort of like that in the same way. So I don't know. I don't read a lot into his name being Jonah personally, but some people get something out of that.
I've also read there's a reference in one of the prophets, and I can't remember. I think maybe it's Hosea, about Israel being like a dove that flits back and forth between Assyria and Egypt. Like it can't make up its mind about who it wants to be and
That's
like
interesting.
loyal to. And so I've read that reference too. So Amy, Jonah gets the command from God to go to Nineveh and cry out against it. I'm just curious what you think about, like, if you were Jonah and you heard that, like, we actually find out Jonah's reaction later on in the book, but if you were Jonah and you heard that command from God, do you have a sense of, like, how you think he's probably feeling about it? What's going on in his head?
I mean, you just raised the point in your introduction that Nineveh is the dangerous enemy, and he is, that member of like an endangered sort of community at that, if we imagine that this is really happening in the time of Jeroboam II. And so on the one hand, I don't know, I'd be like, yeah, they're doing wickedness.
Yeah.
But also, am I really going to go in and tell them to stop? And why would they listen to me?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have any standing there. It's hard to be a prophet among your own people with whom you have like a shared deity. Being sent into another nation that doesn't follow your God and is not connected to your people to try to tell them what to do. It's a pretty bold ask of him.
I really appreciate that reading. And, this is not what prophets in the Hebrew Bible have been called to do up until now.
Yeah.
The sort of most radical thing is Amos was called from the southern kingdom of Judah to go up to the northern kingdom of Israel.
Northern kingdom. Yeah.
Which is the same God, same people, really. And that's sort of the most like external a prophet really has been so far. So to go to this whole other place, and it's the like superpower of the world at the time, and call out a prophecy of
proclaim judgment.
Proclaim judgment, on the city in the name of a God that they do not care about.
Right. It doesn't seem like a mission I would want. Although most prophets don't really want to be prophets, but this is an exceptional ask.
No, that is true. You were talking about prophets not wanting their thing, and there's this prophetic call narrative sort of form that we talk about as biblical scholars. It's the, Moses, when God says go down to Egypt, Moses has like a series of excuses like, who are you? Who am I? Like, they're not going to believe me. I don't talk good. And so there's always a prophetic objection. But Jonah's objection is kind of a whole other level.
He doesn't even verbalize his objection. He's just like, nopity nope. And goes the opposite direction. Like he just goes somewhere else. It's like he didn't hear it. Well, I mean, he heard it because he says he started to flee. So he's running away.
Yeah, he's not just casually taking a vacation.
No, I'm going to go on a cruise. But he doesn't even respond to it verbally.
Yeah. I love that he had his go bag, and as soon as the call of God came, he went, but he went in the other. We don't know exactly where Tarshish was, but it was west toward the Mediterranean, and Nineveh is east. At least I don't know. Do you know where it is? I don't know where it is.
Yeah. No, just the other way.
But it's basically like 180 degrees opposite. Like Nineveh is all the way over in the Fertile Crescent, in the sort of north Tigris Euphrates, and he's headed toward the Mediterranean west, and so it's just like totally headed in the other direction. Can you talk to me a little bit about, what is Jonah, like he's running away from God, which, later on he says he's going to say this is the God of the heaven and earth, right? Like, I don't know.
Why does he think that's going to work?
Yeah, exactly.
There's a modern commentator, I can't think of her name, maybe I can put it in show notes or something if I can find it later, but that wonders whether Jonah is what we would call today like neurodivergent, sort of in his responses, in his sort of rigidity, like he has a sense of how the world is supposed to be and is not open to conversation about it being a different way. Yeah. But I do find it is a little hard for me not to see some humor in this. Yeah. Because it just seems so like you think you're gonna hide from God in the bottom of a boat.
Yeah.
But I feel like the level of denial of what's happening that is clear in the fact that like he fell asleep in the boat. He's just sleeping through this storm that is scaring the daylights out of everyone else on the boat. I don't know. It seems like there's a very deep denial happening in Jonah.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. He has sort of resigned himself to some kind of fate. And so, I mean, this is the ultimate, like, I mean, I have slept through some things that I can't handle too, you know? Like, it's a very good, like, defense mechanism.
It is a good defense mechanism.
This is for real what's happening right here.
Yeah.
You were referring in your introduction to the possibility that the book of Jonah might be a parody or a satire. And is that, like, do you think the author is kind of trying to make us laugh at Jonah here?
You know, that is really the first way I was taught this book. And so it's hard for me not to see it that way, sort of first and foremost.
Yeah.
Like even when my kids were young and like really recalcitrant and would just not do the opposite of whatever I just told them, it would make me laugh to be like, okay, Jonah, like, come, you know, it's funny. I think it's funny. I think it's funny.
Yeah. So as soon as he gets on the boat and they push out to the sea, there's a storm that God sends onto the sea. Is there anything you want to say about that image of God as like the storm raiser?
I mean, it's certainly, there may be some other sort of ancient Near Eastern things to put in here, but it certainly puts in my mind this idea of like the God of heaven and earth, like God controlling creation in a way that is far beyond anything that a human is going to be able to fight against.
Yeah.
You know, thinking of sort of almost again, like I keep coming back to that chapter we read in Job together over the summer, but that sense of like all the things that God is managing in the world that humans don't understand.
Yeah.
And now Jonah refusing to play this specific part he was asked to play, and God sort of demonstrating the breadth of things that are within God's control.
Yeah. I like that way of saying
What does it have you thinking?
I mean, along those lines, also that, you know, in the ancient Near East, in a polytheistic culture, which most of the cultures around Israel were, there would have been sort of different gods who were in charge of all these different things. And so, which is partly how the men of Tarshish are going to respond here. And so that God is sort of in charge of all of them, I think is a pretty big statement about who God is. I think the other thing is that like the purpose of this storm does not seem to be to punish Jonah exactly, but to scare Jonah. I mean, I don't quite know what God's trying to, like God's still trying to get Jonah to go to Nineveh. And I guess the storm is, do you read it just as like a, come on, man, I'm God. Like, what are you doing? Or is he trying to like, I mean, maybe God's end game was to get Jonah into the sea so the fish could come along. Like, I don't quite know.
I don't know quite how to think about it other than I don't see it necessarily as trying to scare Jonah. I see it as like the inevitability of God is going to, at the end of the day, you know, you're going to do the thing that God wants you to do.
Yeah.
And so that's nice that you want to go on a cruise to Tarshish, but that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah. For some reason, when you said that, I was thinking about this book I read to my kids called The Runaway Bunny. Do you know this book?
Oh, yeah.
The kid's like, I'm going to run away from you.
I do.
The mom's like, if you become a fish and run away from me, I'll become a fisherwoman and fish for you. It's like that, except like more stormy.
That's so funny because there's that, I won't go into it now, but there's a prayer in the High Holiday liturgy that I always think of as the Runaway Bunny prayer. That's like slightly creepy in the way that like you actually can't get away even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But also, you know, can be affirming. Like you have this parent figure that is going to continue to morph and find you. So don't even try to get away.
So have a carrot. It's all good. It's all good.
Don't waste your energy.
So the last thing I want to talk about in this section is these sailors who are, presumably non-Israelites.
Presumably, yeah.
And they pretty quickly figure out that some kind of God is mad at somebody. And so they're trying to sort that, like they're trying to figure out whose God it is that's mad. I just like these guys are going to get more interesting in the next little section of the text, but how do you think about them?
I can't remember if this is how it described them in your translation, Bobby, but it describes their response in my translation as what the sailors cried out, each to his own god, which that seems even different to me than the sort of, idea in the ancient Near East, there are many gods and there's like a storm god and a whatever. It makes me think of the sailors as like this group of folks who maybe come from all different backgrounds and all different cultures. And because they're sort of in this particular business, they wound up on a boat together, but it's not like, it doesn't seem like the sailors are of one people.
Yeah.
And Jonah is of another people.
Oh, I like that, Amy. And that's kind of the way you think about sailors. Like, it might be a little bit anachronistic, but you sort of think about sailors and people in those kind of, shipping business as being sort of from all around and unexpected conglomerations of people in one boat and that sort of thing.
Right. And so it is, it's interesting to think like they are in crisis. They have a shared belief that crisis must be caused by some kind of divine upset. And so they're just trying everything. Like, who you got a connection to it? Like, you call your God. Like, who, how can we figure out what's going on here? And then eventually they realize it must be Jonah.
It's funny to me, like, in verse 6, when the ship's captain comes down, it's like finds Jonah asleep. It's just funny, but just to think like what his reaction would be, like the ship's going down, we're in real trouble, and here's this dude in the bottom of the boat taking a nap.
Yeah. How can you be so undisturbed?
Hi everyone, it's Bobby here from Bible Worm. We hope you're enjoying the podcast. Amy and I started Bible Worm a couple of years ago because we wanted to create a space where we could talk deeply about the Bible in ways that bring together our academic backgrounds in biblical studies and our deep engagement with communities and people of faith. We decided to make this resource free because we want everyone to have access to sound biblical scholarship that connects biblical faith to everyday life. We hope you're finding the podcast fits that need. That said, while the podcast is free, making it is not. Amy and I and the rest of Team Bible Worm spend a lot of time and energy studying, recording, and editing the podcast to make it freely available to the public. If you enjoyed the podcast, and if you find yourself in a position to support our work, we hope that you will consider becoming a Bible Worm supporter for as little as $4 per month. For a bit more, you can also get early access to episodes, weekly liturgies, video Bible studies, join a monthly discussion group, and more. We realize not everyone is in a position to support the podcast, but if you appreciate our work and want to support us, we hope you'll check out our Patreon at patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for more details. Thanks so much for listening, and now back to this week's podcast. Okay, so I'll pick up then in verse 7 and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the sailors said to each other, "Come on, let's cast lots so that we might learn who is to blame for this evil that is happening to us." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they said to him, "Tell us, since you're the cause of this evil happening to us, what do you do and where are you from? What's your country and of what people are you?" He said to them, "I'm a Hebrew. I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." Then the men were terrified and said to him, "What have you done?" The men knew that Jonah was fleeing from the Lord because he had told them. They said to him, "What will we do about you so the sea will become calm around us?" The sea was continuing to rage. He said to them, "Pick me up and hurl me into the sea, then the sea will become calm around you. I know it's my fault that this great storm has come upon you." The men rowed to reach dry land, but they couldn't manage it because the sea continued to rage against them. So they called on the Lord, saying, "Please, Lord, don't let us perish on account of this man's life, and don't blame us for innocent blood. You are the Lord. Whatever you want, you can do." Then they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased its raging. The men worshipped the Lord with a profound reverence. They offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made solemn promises. Meanwhile, the Lord provided a great fish to swallow Jonah. Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. So exciting. This is a good story.
Yeah, it's a fast-moving plot.
Yeah. I like how the narrator's like going so fast that has to stop and like remind you like, oh yeah, Jonah had already told them that he was fleeing. And like, there's like these little like asides the narrator is telling because...
That's right. They were so eager to get to the next part.
Amy, can you talk to us a little bit about casting lots and what that means?
Yeah. It was sort of a form of, I guess we would say, divination. I mean, I think of it a lot like sort of like rolling dice. Dice. Which one's the plural?
Dice.
Dice. Okay.
Dice. Dices.
Dice. I don't know. That in some ways it would reveal information to you that was coming from the divine realm.
We think of rolling dice as like randomness.
Yeah.
But in the ancient world, it was that moment where the dice were like in the air, not controlled by humans, that the gods could actually like intervene to make them land the way they were supposed to land. Mm-hmm. So even in Israel, like the priest had the little sacred dice, what do they call it? The Urim and the Thummim.
Urim and the Thummim, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a way of consulting the gods. And so when the lot falls on Jonah, this is not just like, this is the whatever God's saying to them. That's
this is not like you drew the short straw, so we're going to throw you over the end. This is
the gods pointed you out, or God did. So they ask him who he is, and he says, "I'm a Hebrew. I worship the Lord." That's the proper name of God there, the God of heaven who made the sea and the dry land. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that response from Jonah?
I mean, first, just the use of the word Hebrew.
Yeah.
We don't see that all that often. You know, I see in my little footnotes here that it's a term sometimes used when speaking to non-Israelites.
Oh, yeah.
It is connected, the root of the word is connected to sort of like crossing between things, like boundary crossing, passing through. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that just sort of stood out to me. And the other is just, I find it funny that this is Jonah who God told him to do something and he went the opposite direction as though he had a choice in the matter. But then he states so confidently, I worship the Lord, the God of heaven who made both the sea and the land.
Yeah.
Like, that's a real statement.
Yeah.
You know, you are a servant of Adonai, who made the sea and the land, and yet you thought maybe you could wriggle out of this. Ask.
Yeah.
Is funny.
It's so interesting that Jonah, he's not doubting that God has power.
No.
He's not. Nope. He's just like, he full well knows who God is and what God can do. He knows he's going to get busted, I think.
Yes.
Like, there's no way, this is not going to work out for you.
Uh-huh.
And yet he's doing it anyway.
That's it. Yes. That's exactly right.
So when Jonah tells them who he is and what he's done, he then tells them, just toss me overboard. And then, I'm the problem, and everything will be fine for you if you toss me overboard. Like, Jonah would rather be thrown into the sea. Maybe that's been his plan this whole time, is let's get out to the sea. And so he would rather die? Is that how you read that? How do you read that?
I mean, that's what it seems like. Like, he would rather die, and we'll see more of this kind of language at the end of the book, than carry out this thing that God has asked him to do.
Yeah.
And so he has put himself in a position where that could happen, being heaved overboard. But it hurts the whole thing kind of hurts my heart if I think of it not as a satire. Like, if you think of it as a satire, then it's just, you can just kind of laugh at it because the enormity of what he's saying is so, the scale of it is so big and the plot moves so fast that you can laugh at it. But now he's involved other people in this that he's saying, throw me overboard. They don't want to throw him overboard.
Yeah.
They don't want to be all caught up in this. They don't want to be responsible for ending his life. And so they try to row against the sea. They can't get in the middle of this thing between God and Jonah. But they really, they feel it. This group of, this sort of random grouping of sailors from all different countries, they feel the magnitude of what they're doing more deeply than Jonah seems to.
I really love the way that these characters are depicted. Like, they really are, like, they don't know Jonah. Like, he's just some random dude
he's
asleep,
just some guy.
Paid the fare, got on the boat. Like, you could imagine just being like, yeah, sure, like, we'll throw you over. But there really is something about them that is very, like, just humanly compassionate, wanting to take care of him and doing everything they can to save him. And it's only at the very last, they realize they're not going to make it to shore. They realize there's nothing they can do. And so they say that prayer, we're going to have to do something we don't want to do. Yeah. And so don't hold it against us.
Bobby, do you have a sense that he can't jump overboard?
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Like, why does he put it on them to do it?
Why does he put it on them to do it? I don't have an answer to that question. I don't even think I had ever thought about that question before, but I'm really thinking about how he has brought other people into this story now, and that's complicated for them.
That feels like that opens up to something to me, Amy, just that, like you've said it a couple of times, and just right now about drawing in other people, like your deal with God, and not being able to sort of, I don't know, respond in a positive way, and the implications that has for other people around you. I don't quite know where that goes, but I
don't know either.
I think it goes somewhere.
I wish it went to like softening Jonah's heart as they saw how people cared about him, but it doesn't.
It does not go there.
No, it doesn't go there.
Robert Alter's little thing about asking somebody to go to Berlin in 1936 is helping me relate to Jonah.
Yes.
Like, you can imagine for multiple reasons why you would rather get thrown into the ocean than go and do that.
Yes, and there are, with Robert Alter, there are, within a slightly different lens, there are a number of rabbis who read this imagining that because Jonah was a prophet, he knew that Assyria was going to destroy the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, soon. And so he didn't want to be involved in saving them. He wanted them to get destroyed because he felt that's how he would save his people. Like, he felt like he was being asked to choose between the fate of his people and doing this thing that God asked him to do. And he felt really strongly about it, even though he recognized he wasn't going to be able to overcome the power of God exactly. He was repeatedly willing to put himself at great risk because he did not want to do this.
Yeah.
That's not a funny reading, though.
That's not a funny reading at all. But it makes you, it makes you really think about the bounds of forgiveness. We'll come back to that because that's going to come up more. This part of the story ends with the men making the sacrifice to God.
Yeah, to like the proper name of God.
Yeah.
Like, now they're sacrificing to Adonai, this random grouping of sailors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you read them as like, are they monotheists now? Or have they, is this a conversion story or what is this?
I don't read it as a conversion story. I guess I read it as they are recognizing the power of Adonai.
Yeah.
I don't see that they're renouncing the power of other gods, but I don't know if they had ever heard of this God before or if they just see that what Jonah says seems to have been true because when they threw him overboard, then the storm stopped. Yeah, that's as far as I would go with it. What do you think?
That's me too. I mean, I think it is possible to read this as Jonah has told them that this is the God of heaven and earth and that they then have seen the power. And so they have come to believe that as opposed to believing other things. I think it's possible to read the story that way. But the story's not really trying to get you to go there. And it seems like if that was the point, it would push you a little harder in that direction.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that they are recognizing the power of the God of Israel, but they are not abandoning their own other religious commitments in the process. That's how I read that. Now, God quite famously sends a fish along to swallow Jonah. Jonah spends 3 days down there in the belly of the fish. We're not going to talk about what happens to Jonah in the belly of the fish too much, but is there anything you want to say to bridge us to chapter 3?
Okay, I have 2 quick thoughts to bridge to chapter 3. One is that the fish saved him from drowning. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how that would really work scientifically, but, the fish, it seems like a punishment, but also it was a way to save him.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of like the power of chaotic waters in biblical stories and what it means to jump into that force of chaos and sort of be held in it, but within a space of, sort of relative safety. It's almost like Jonah was outside the world for a couple days, like inside that fish.
And what he's doing down there is singing this really lovely psalm about the temple and wanting to see the temple again, and maybe that sort of being protected in the middle of the storm. Mm-hmm. There really is an act. I mean, being trapped inside a fish sounds terrible to me. I just want to put that out there.
Yes,
but like I think Jonah got thrown into the sea thinking like, this is the end of me.
Right.
And this God who stirred up the sea against him is now protecting him in this really beautiful, I mean, it's not beautiful, like it's probably pretty gross in there, but like that God could and would do that says something really lovely.
Yeah, and it holds him in this in-between space where he was so willing to give up his life before, and somehow being in the fish, in the water, seems to make him want to live again in some way.
My favorite bit in the book of Jonah is chapter 2, verse 10. The Lord spoke to the fish and it vomited Jonah onto the dry land. I just think that's like...
There's really some good stuff.
Yeah, good times. It spewed him up. Yeah. All right. Mm-hmm. So Jonah has now been saved by the fish and vomited out on the land. And so we are in chapter 3. The Lord's word came to Jonah a second time. Get up and go to Nineveh, that great city, and declare against it the proclamation that I am commanding you. And Jonah got up and went to Nineveh according to the Lord's word. Now Nineveh was indeed an enormous city, a 3 days' walk across. Jonah started into the city, walking 1 day, and he cried out, just 40 days more and Nineveh will be overthrown. And the people of Nineveh believed God. They proclaimed a fast and put on mourning clothes, from the greatest of them to the least significant. When the word of it reached the king of Nineveh, he got up from his throne, stripped himself of his robe, covered himself with mourning clothes, and sat in ashes. Then he announced, in Nineveh, by decree of the king and his officials, neither human nor animal, cattle nor flock will taste anything, no grazing and no drinking water. Let humans and animals alike put on mourning clothes, and let them call upon God forcefully, and let all persons stop their evil behavior and the violence that's under their control. He thought, who knows, God may see this and turn from his wrath, so that we might not perish. God saw what they were doing, that they had ceased their evil behavior, so God stopped planning to destroy them, and he didn't do it. So the call that comes to Jonah the second time is essentially the same as the call that came the first time. Mm-hmm. And this time Jonah goes. I guess, like, as he just sort of... How do you read Jonah there? He's given up on the possibility that he could run away, or he has actually had some sort of transformation in the fish belly? Do you have thoughts about why Jonah goes this time?
I guess my reading has always been that he realizes there's not another way.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to get out of this.
Yeah. I gave it my best shot.
I really tried.
Out by a fish.
Yeah, it's a little interesting to me that he doesn't argue with God. Like, we have had other...
That's true.
I don't know if we would quite call them prophets, but like Moses argues with God, Abraham argues with God. Like, you can... But he doesn't. He just either does what God says or doesn't do what God says.
Because Moses said, hey, nobody's going to believe me. And God gave him that really cool staff that turns into a snake.
Yeah, almost like send your brother.
Jonah could have gotten one of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got to argue more, Jonah.
Right. But he doesn't.
We've had the city of Nineveh described a couple of times now as a big city. Mm-hmm. So in verse 3, we get this statement. The CEB has it as it was an enormous city. Yeah. But the Hebrew quite woodenly, like my wooden translation for purposes, is Nineveh was a city great to God. Mm-hmm. And so... You could like read that as like godly proportions or something. Like that's how the CEB gets enormous. But there might be other ways of reading it. How do you take that?
My translation is the same thing. It takes it to be enormously large. And indeed this, the next part of the sentence goes on to describe how big it is. Yeah. So like that is an important feature of this. Yes. is there a way to read that like Gedolah Elohim as like important to God or big in God's mind? Or
there are certainly readings that do that.
Yeah.
And, Lelohim can simply mean like belonging to God, like as a great city belonging to God.
Yeah. I mean, there's clearly some relationship between God and this city, or God would not be sending a prophet to this city.
Right. Robert Alter reads it the way we were just saying, a great city of gods, like a great city belonging to God.
Yeah.
Even though we might, putting ourselves in the position of Jonah, we might think of Nineveh as being opposed to God in some way.
Right.
If you read it that way, it belongs to God. The description goes on to say it's a 3 days walk across, which is like, huge. I don't know how far you can walk in a day, but it's like Los Angeles size, which is surely an exaggeration.
Right, this is impossibly big for an ancient city. Yes.
So Jonah goes 1 day's walk. So this means he's like a third of the way into the city.
He's like, in the main part of the city, I guess.
Yeah. He's in the suburbs.
He's in the suburbs.
He's like in Sandy Springs.
Yeah.
Somewhere like that. He's in Conway. So he goes third of the way into the city, and then he just cries out, 40 days more and Nineveh will be overthrown. Do you read that as like all that Jonah does? Or do you read Jonah as like going on like all about the city?
No, I read that as all Jonah does.
That's the whole thing, yeah.
I think just because it seems to me like Jonah desperately does not want to do this and is just trying to do the minimum that is being required of him. God said, go deliver this message. So he goes until he's like mostly in the center of the city.
Plausibly.
And he says the minimum number of words he could, maybe quietly. No. He like whispered them to a chicken,
Hear ye. Yeah.
That's how I read it.
That's the way I read it too. I was reading some commentaries that think of him as like, this is just like the beginning of his thing and he goes around. But I like the story a whole lot better if that is everything. Like he goes plausibly far enough into the city, not downtown. He's just okay.
He doesn't go to the palace. He doesn't go to, he just
says like 4 words and then off we go. So he does the minimal prophecy. The people do the like maximum repentance, like
super max.
Yeah. How do you make sense of how do you make sense of that response?
It's really pretty crazy. Like this is a guy they don't know. He doesn't introduce himself. They do not worship the same God that he does. He doesn't even say where this prophecy is coming from. Yeah. Like he doesn't say the God of heaven and earth or anything.
Oh yeah, it's just passive. Like Nineveh will be overthrown.
He just says, right. And their response is so extreme. This is, again, where I get pushed into the, like, this is a parody mindset. Yeah. Like, they're putting sackcloth on the animals. Yeah. The cows are wearing sackcloth now. Repenting their cow sins.
They're not allowed to eat or drink anything. Like, the cows are fasting.
It's really... I just feel like it's so extreme. The prophecy is so minimal, and that response is so maximal. It really makes the other... interactions of the prophets with the people in the other stories seem to... like Isaiah walked around naked for like 3 years.
Yeah. So the king tells the people to call upon God, stop their evil behavior and the violence that's under their control. And he's a little bit like, who knows? Like maybe it'll work.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how, it's the same question I had for the sailors earlier. Do you read the king as having had some sort of conversion experience, or the king as... How do you read the king?
Related to that question, I want to say 2 things. One is just pointing out what you said. Like he says, maybe this will work. Is that the way that Jonah delivers this prophecy to them, there's no possibility for it to be turned around.
Yeah.
Like there's no unless you repent.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what's going to happen.
This is happening.
Drop the mic. Like, that's what's going to happen. But the other thing that stands out to me, and I don't know if I'm overreading this, but is that we've been using, Adonai, the, tetragrammaton, the proper name of God, Lord, it is often translated, mostly. But when it talks about the people of Nineveh, it says the people of Nineveh believed God, which is back to Elohim. Yeah. I'm not trying to put forth the idea that those are two different gods.
Right.
But sometimes, I have heard sometimes people reading the text talk about Elohim as this sense of like the God that is God of all, like the universal aspect of God, and Adonai as this more particularistic, like covenantal God with certain
that's interesting. Yeah.
groups. And so it's interesting to me that it switches here to it switches the name of God that it's talking about. That really doesn't answer your question.
Well, it does a little bit because, so there's a couple of things there. One is that word believed is in Hebrew he'emin, which is trusted, which sounds different than believed, right? So it's not like a doxological response. Secondly, I really like that idea that you're sort of pushing toward of like where they're able to get is there is a God, but they're not who is doing this, and maybe that God can be persuaded, but they have not gotten so far as to be like particularistically recognizing that it's the God of Israel. So there's still a step back from that. And so it's a little bit like the men on the boat. Like they recognize that there is a God who has power, and they say, well, what would that God want? That God wants us to stop doing evil and stop doing violence. And so let's stop those things and see if that works, basically.
That's right. That the way you just said that, Bobby, made me realize, like, again, one of the other things Jonah doesn't say is what they're supposed to stop.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's
just
a done deal, y'all. Yeah.
It's a done deal, and there's but the people know. Like, this points to what you and I say all the time.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys, you know don't tell me you don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
And
they know that any God, any universalist, compassionate God would say, it's the violence, y'all.
Yeah. So the CEB is a little paraphrastic here in my mind. God stopped planning to destroy them. This is Nicham again, which we saw in that Exodus 32 text. God changed God's mind about the evil God was planning to do to them or something like that. So we have another, like, we've seen this sort of theme of God changing God's mind a couple times in this text. I'm curious, like, how does that sit with you here?
I feel like this is a God I know from other stories in the Hebrew Bible. God gets super angry.
Yeah.
And God changes God's mind towards compassion.
Yep.
Usually in the context of the covenantal relationship with Israel.
Yeah.
And here outside the context of that.
In that Exodus 32 story, Moses sort of talked God down by reminding God about the covenant with Abraham and then about the covenant with the people and God's reputation and all of these sort of like the tied upness between God and that particular covenanted people of Israel. And here, God still changes God's mind exactly as you're saying, but in this more universal sense and without being persuaded by like an intermediary, but just simply seeing what the people do.
Yeah.
And so it is an expansive sense of God's ability to be merciful, to change God's mind toward mercy. Okay, so the narrative lectionary text ends there. We're going to spend a few minutes looking at the 4th chapter of the book. So I'm picking up in chapter 4, verse 1. But Jonah thought this was utterly wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, "Come on, Lord. Wasn't this precisely my point when I was back in my own land? This is why I fled to Tarshish earlier. I know that you are a merciful and compassionate God, very patient, full of faithful love, and willing not to destroy. At this point, Lord, you may as well take my life from me, because it would be better for me to die than to live." The Lord responded, "Is your anger a good thing?" But Jonah went out from the city and sat down east of the city. There he made himself a hut and sat under it in the shade to see what would happen to the city. Then the Lord God provided a shrub, and it grew up over Jonah, providing shade for his head and saving him from his misery. Jonah was very happy about the shrub. But God provided a worm Dun, 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 dun. The next day at dawn, and it attacked the shrub. Dun, 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 so that it died. Then as the sun rose, God provided a dry east wind, and the sun beat down on Jonah's head, and he became faint. He begged that he might die, saying, "It's better for me to die than to live." God said to Jonah, "Is your anger about the shrub a good thing?" Jonah said, "Yes, my anger is good, even to the point of death." But the Lord said, "You pitied the shrub for which you didn't work and which you didn't raise. It grew in a night and perished in a night. Yet for my part, can't I pity Nineveh, that great city in which there are more than 120,000 people who can't tell their right hand from their left, and also many animals?"
And also many animals. For some reason in graduate school, it struck me as very funny that that's how this book ended.
Yes, it ends in a question, and the question is about animals. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Amy, you were talking earlier about how Jonah never says anything to God, but here Jonah finally starts talking.
Yeah.
And says, "This is what I was saying before," even though, as far as we can tell from the text, Jonah hadn't said anything previously.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
We were sort of establishing at the beginning of the podcast that maybe Jonah was fleeing because he was afraid or because he didn't think people would believe him. But here he says, "I fled because I knew you were merciful and compassionate."
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about how you understand what Jonah is saying there?
It feels so strange in the context of this story to say, like, "You're so merciful and compassionate that I want to die."
Yeah, yeah.
I have heard it explained, and this has been helpful to me, as yes, of course, God is compassionate and merciful, and also that is balanced with a sense of justice and fairness and truth.
Yeah.
And Jonah was put in a position here where it seems the words that he spoke to Nineveh are now false.
Yes.
And he feels that very deeply, and he feels that he's been tied up in what feels to him to be unjust, and God's not holding the line of fairness here, and it was compassion that wasn't called for. And he doesn't want to be tied up in it. He wants nothing to do with it.
Amy, there's a couple of things that are in there that are so interesting to me. I had not really thought about the concern about being tied up in something, like saying something false, that God doesn't have your back, that you want, there is something in which Jonah would be willing to cry out against the city. But once he's done that, he actually doesn't want there to be the possibility of compassion.
Yeah.
And I had sort of processed that as he doesn't want God to be compassionate to those people because they're enemies, which I think is also probably
I think
right.
It's in there. Mm-hmm.
But to think but I cried out against them. And it's just making me think about I can think of prophets today who sort of seem to relish the againstness of prophecy. Mm-hmm. And they maybe I don't know if I should include myself in there or not, liking the possibility that God might be angry at the people that we're prophetic about. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of shocking that God might not be.
Yeah.
I was also looking in chapter 1, God says, "Cry out against Nineveh." In chapter 3, God says, "Cry out to Nineveh." It's Al in chapter 1 and El in chapter 3. So I was just wondering if that shift in God is the very first one sounds like it's going to be negative, and the second one sounds like,
That's interesting. I had not noticed that. I feel like Jonah and God really do not understand each other in this chapter. Because the whole the shade, bush or whatever grows over Jonah, and Jonah's happy about it, and then he's upset when the worm comes. I mean, I read that as he's happy about the bush because it is doing something for him. Yes. Not like he has warm, caring feelings for the bush.
Right.
He's happy about being in the shade.
Yeah.
So then I feel like the thing God says at the end with how can you be so upset about the loss of your bush?
Yeah.
Unless we think of Nineveh as doing something for God. I feel like God is thinking about compassion for something, and that is not what Jonah's thinking about.
The way that I understand that, I mean, it's kind of confusing, and even the way that it's written, it's there's two things happening here, and they never quite meet.
Yeah.
And the book ends on a question mark.
Yes.
The way that I have sort of made sense, although it might be an oversimplification, is that Jonah he's sort of utilitarian about God a little bit. Like he wants God to, his reference point is his own self for the things he is happy about and the things that he is upset about. And in the terms of God, that results in sort of a nationalistic view of God, who is the God of Israel, even though this book is pointing to a God who is more universal than that. And so in the way that Jonah is happy and sad about the shade of the bush for him and then losing it, Jonah wants God to be the God of Israel and not the God of Israel's enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just put your finger...
God is sort of pointing out the
I think you put your finger really on the heart of the matter. Like all the other peoples who are in this story, the sailors and also the people of Nineveh, they have a relationship to God or to Adonai, but not to the exclusion of these other deities as far as we know. And Jonah, all he's got is Adonai.
Yeah.
And so to think of Adonai as like not being just oriented towards Jonah and Jonah's people, it feels like a loss to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you think about if we're talking about this text as having been written in the Persian period after the exile, like Israel has been through some stuff in the 200 years before that at the hands of the very people who are here. But also God has been compassionate in the way that God sort of saves Jonah from the sea in a kind of unpleasant way. But God does see Israel through the exile onto other things. And so God's compassion is exercising in all directions as it is in this story. But it feels like a God who is compassionate to the one who has hurt us is a really hard thing. And I mean, like, I totally get Jonah there. Like, I get it. All right, Amy, I'm always surprised by how much there is one can continue to dig out of this text. Like this text is so short and kind of simple in the way that it's written, but there's really a lot in there, and you could talk about it much longer than we have time for. When you're reading this text today and you're thinking about this moment that we are in and how this text might speak to our communities, what are you focused on today?
Bobby, thinking about this text in relationship to the election that has not yet happened as we are recording it.
Right.
And that will have happened by the time this is at least being preached in communities, in Christian communities, really kind of is making me see the story differently.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in this tension between the idea of a compassionate, universal God and a God who is like specifically oriented towards you and your people, whatever you imagine that to be, but like a God who has your back and your truth and is going to hold other people accountable and is going to promote your well-being.
Yes.
And I think in a moment when many people, at least right now going into the election, feel kind of afraid or kind of abused by other communities, we want that God who's got our back. Like we want that one.
Yeah.
And so it has been interesting and helpful for me to have the book of Jonah as sort of a mirror to like, okay, that's real. And also I can see through this story the things that Jonah can't see about the importance of having that universal, compassionate presence, like that kind of God.
Yeah.
And I wish that Jonah could see it along the way in the story, and I wonder how it would have created more ease for him. So I'm holding that question up for myself, but also really in like stark awareness that at moments when people are afraid or they feel attacked, that's not the go-to version of God.
Right.
So this story at least gives us a space to hold both of those ideas of God in tension with each other. But it doesn't, the story doesn't work out in the end. Jonah doesn't get what God's saying. They don't ever get on the same page. It just puts them both out there.
Yeah.
And that may be as far as we can go.
Yeah. That is so interesting, that ending of God says, can I have compassion on who I want to have compassion on, basically? And then that's the end of the book, and Jonah never...
That's the end of the book.
Never
And
responds.
of course, as a reader outside the story, I'm like, of course, this is the whole point of prophecy. Of course we want the compassionate God. Of course we want a God who is universal. And I laugh at Jonah for not wanting that.
Right.
And then thinking about this in the context of our own fears, I totally get Jonah.
Yeah. I think I'm somewhere similar, Amy. I don't know if it's quite... I think I have maybe a different inflection of the same kind of idea. But I think that's where this text is leading me as well. You know, there is a part of me that understands Jonah's sort of wishing for there to be retribution against people that I feel are not my people.
Yeah.
And I don't like that part of me. Yeah. But it's there, and I recognize that in Jonah. And so I hear God at the end of this text saying, hey, Williamson, can't I be compassionate to who I want to be compassionate to? And that sort of, like, if we've got to choose between a God who is too merciful to too many people and a God who is too wrathful against too many people, like, I will choose, if God wants to err on the side of compassion and mercy, like, that is all to the good. There's a couple other things that are occurring to me here. One is that this is about God's compassion and mercy, but it is also about Jonah's willingness to speak a challenging word to people that disagree with him. And he doesn't want to do it, but God keeps sort of forcing him back to it. And so there's something here. It's not just like God is willy-nilly being compassionate. It's that God needs Jonah as the prophet to go, like, he just barely sticks his toe in Nineveh. He barely says anything, but like he's at least out there doing it. And then there is this massive repentance that happens among the Ninevites. It's not a very specific repentance, which I like. It's not like suddenly they're, streaming to the temple in Jerusalem to make sacrifices at the altar. The things that they do are they stop doing evil and they stop being violent. And that seems to be enough for God to be compassionate. And so I think like that's helpful, right? Like, in order for God to be compassionate, we can't be evil, violent people. And so if we see that in ourselves, that we are doing violence, we need to stop it. And in order for other people to receive God's compassion and mercy, there is also an expectation that they would stop being violent. It's not a very high bar, but it's a bar that humans seem to have a hard time reaching much of the time. So I guess I'm a little bit like, yes, God's mercy is bigger than we can grasp. And also, there seem to be some requirements for God's mercy related to our relationship to violence. And I don't want to lose track of that either.
Yes. No, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that, like, speaking what small word you can,
Right.
in the face
Even to
of
people
power.
who don't have the same framework as you.
Yes, exactly. And people who seem much more powerful than you, and people who, yes. Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
I would rather get thrown off a boat than try to convince you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I get it. All right, Amy. Well, it's always good to talk with you, and hopefully the world is a lovely place as this podcast is coming out into the world.
Yes, indeed.
We will be back here next week, and we're in the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, which is Isaiah's call story.
He's not naked in that chapter.
He's not naked in that one.
That's not part of the naked stuff. Yeah.
No.
All right, I look forward to it, Bobby. Take care.
All right, Amy. You too.
Bye.
See you then. Bye. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm, and thanks for supporting us on Patreon.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us again next time when we'll discuss the call of the prophet Isaiah as told in Isaiah 6, 1-13. Until then, keep on digging.